Enjoying a peaceful day under the shade of a tree, a young red-haired girl takes a bite out of her delicious sandwich. She gets greeted by an older nobleman who had to comment he couldn't resist dishes he's never seen before. He kindly asked for a bite. The girl happily opened her basket, offering him an array of choices to choose from. And with one bite of the same style of sandwich she was eating, he had to comment that it was salted perfectly and the spices left him wanting more. He could eat this forever. The umami of the meat was truly incredible, but when he asked what kind it was, he never expected her to answer backhorn, as in the monster. Away from her, he puked it up at a tree, unable to believe he ate something so dreadful. Backhorns were beasts with a powerful poison. He couldn't understand why a noble lady like her would be eating something like that, but then remembered she might be the one that he's heard of. Meanwhile, she was delighted he enjoyed it so much. With sufficient preparation, even the foulest monster meat could be made delicious. She knew no one understood it, but believed one day someone would. At a get-together in Praven Park, our heroine, Malfiria Marchalraid. What in the fictitious Japanese Victorian era name is this? Anyways, she enjoyed a delicious bite of her food. His Majesty's banquet didn't disappoint. Every dish was refined and first class in both appearance and flavor. Her attendant, Mrs. Talbot, had to scold and remind her why she was here. The purpose of this banquet, held by King Langdaeus on this fine autumn day, in celebration of a good harvest for nobles to sample wares. In other words, it's an opportunity to meet potential partners. And with Malfiria being the daughter of a count, she was on the menu herself, here to find a fiancé. But honestly, none of her friends were here, and she was hardly interested. However, her stepmother told her if she didn't find a fiancé within the year, she'd be sent to a convent. Even her father was willing to accept anyone at this point, as long as they were a decent person. So, she attended upon their insistence. But the others here only gossiped about how she was unapproachable despite her lovely face. She ran away, feeling ashamed because everyone avoided her. Heading into the area where there were more knights than nobles, she thought to maybe look for a fiancé here, perhaps someone who didn't know her. She suddenly heard a woman scream about a monstrous beast, and everyone began to flee. She spotted a nearby elderly couple. The man's cane broke, and he couldn't walk, so Mel offered to help. But unfortunately, the monster would appear right behind her. It was a backhorn. These normally didn't appear in inhabited areas. She decided to lure the monster away from the couple, with her inadequacies running through her mind. She failed to find a fiancé, and now this. She didn't want to die here. Then suddenly, a silver-haired man would slice through the monster with his blade. In the blink of an eye, Aristide Rogier du Galbraith, the blood-mad Duke, had saved her. Somewhat deviously, he asked, "What is it? Do I scare you?" She gulped, slaughtering beasts to slake his thirst for blood. The blood-mad Duke was said to be an eccentric fiend, but in Mel's eyes, he was so beautiful. She gasped, getting up to tell him she was glad to see he was in good health. He came off as pretty aloof, asking if she was oblivious to the situation. But seeing the blood near his mouth, she quickly shifted things into asking him to rinse it, going into a rant about how Backhorn's blood may be completely corrupted with magic toxins. And while a live beast's blood was untainted, swallowing toxins could cause fevers or intense stomach pain. If it hadn't been mad, its blood could have been used to make sausages. He interrupted her rambling to mention she seemed quite knowledgeable, and only now did she realize she was getting deep into the weeds of it. She began to bow over and over to apologize, but he'd suddenly offer purified water so that she could be cured of any potential magic toxins. He then tried to take her away for her to get new clothes she could borrow, but she didn't want to impose, mentioning it was no worse than when she butchered a beast last week. He was stunned. He asked her name, so she bowed again, introducing her full title, and this made him laugh. He's heard of her. She was the girl who eats monsters, the voracious Villainess. In this world, there were magical beasts and unusual plants known as monsters, which were different from standard creatures. Due to the magic power they contained, consuming it might cause vomiting, stomach pain, and fevers. For this reason, they were typically disposed of once slain. Being the voracious Villainess, she felt it'd be silly to hide it now. She explained she wasn't actually interested in monsters, just food. He could hardly believe that beast looked edible to her. However, she licked her lips in affirmation. She couldn't help but wonder how she could prepare it to make it delicious. The Duke looked like he'd never seen anyone like her before. She felt she screwed up again. So she tried smiling, and it seemed effective, even though she perceived it as backfiring. He then took her hand again, and she thought, is this man not afraid of me? Now, far enough away, he had to ask if beast meat really was good, and how it tasted. She'd gotten this question before. Her answers usually ended with people finding her creepy. She described backhorn meat as a similar texture to beef, and very delicious. Since it was wild game, she put extra effort into tenderizing it. Then, it could be roasted or stewed. He was surprised, and now concluded that as long as the beast wasn't mad, its magical flesh wouldn't upset the stomach. She was surprised he caught on so quickly. She'd never gotten a reaction like this before from someone. He actually listened to what she had to say. She was so happy. She then explained that to make monster meat safe for consumption, the magic must first be removed by bleeding out with special tools. He then uttered her name, making her blush, as he asked her to prepare something for him sometime. Aw, they're pretty cute. With him grabbing her hands, she thought about how she's never met anyone like him, and he honestly couldn't wait to try everything she had to offer. At the House Galbraith Pavilion, he ordered his servant, Caus LaForge, to bring Mel a change of clothes. And then in another tent, he prepared a tub with water she could wash her face and hands in while she waited. She again didn't want to impose, and since she was mostly unscathed, she suggested he wash up first. And whoa, we go into the shirtless scene right away? Mel was caught off guard. Seen knights and hunters wash outdoors before, but she wasn't immune to this, and yet she couldn't look away. Eris asked if something was wrong, and she couldn't help but reply that his physique was remarkable. He was a bit bashful, answering, "Oh, yes, I suppose. I do train." Mel detailed his magnificent display with the sword earlier. While washing up together, she asked if she could learn to behead a beast as well. He thought it was possible once you get the hang of it, but she wouldn't be swinging a blade with her slender arms. He told her to leave the fighting to him. She had to ask what he meant by that, and now he was flustered, quickly washing his hands and making the excuse he was just used to it. He turned it into offering to hunt down any monster she'd like to try, making her excited, because the great forest in his duchy was like the holy land of monsters, home to many rare species not found in her family's domain. The two got a bit touchy-feely with removing the blood off each other's faces, before Caus interrupted them, asking his lord how he could sit half naked before a young lady. Eris answered he wasn't completely exposed. However, Caus found it a hardly appropriate sight for the unmarried daughter of a count. Mel came out in a fresh, flowery dress, one that the Duke had borrowed from the Queen. She was gushing on the inside over how unbelievably cool he looked holding a monster's head, and all of Eris's men were shocked. Normally, when presenting a monster's head to a lady, they'd faint. These two seemed like the perfect fit. Saying their goodbyes in the evening, the Duke mentioned next time he'd bring her a well-marbled royal moodle. The thought of it made Mel drool. She shook her head, thinking she was being naughty, possibly imposing him with her desires. She then told him the beast would taste better if captured alive, and he was willing to rise to the challenge. They said the blood-mad Duke was a bloodthirsty fiend, but she could tell now the rumors really were just talk. She saw him as a kind soul. From inside her carriage, she offered him a basket containing jerky from Skitspit, a beast from her family's territory. He took a bite immediately, and Caus was not happy that he didn't have it go through a taste tester first, telling him to spit it out. Eris then shoved it in Caus's mouth, and the servant described a strong flavor with umami that spread throughout the mouth. It was delicious, and now Eris was hopeful for other beast dishes. Mel's eyes widened. She's creeped people out before. They've spread malicious rumors about and shunned her. She ducked below her window to let her tears run. She felt the Duke was too kind. Saying their goodbyes again, she assumed he was just being polite. Perhaps just curious to know what monsters tasted like, what the rumored beast-eating voracious Villainess was like. But she wondered, just maybe, she could get her hopes up a little. By the time Mel returned to her family's territory, it was already winter. She was surprised to see her father by the gate, waving to her and running towards the carriage. As he opened the door, He asked his daughter what she had done. She was confused, asking what he meant, but immediately bowed. And before she could apologize for not finding a fiancé, her father reminded her that she was a lady of the Marshall Raid family, and not suitable for a duke. He asked why the Duke of Galbraith was asking for her hand. Mel mistook this for the Duke literally needing hands, but her father made it clear the Duke was seeking her hand in marriage. He was distraught, wondering how to respond to the Duke's letter. But Mel was dripping with cold sweat all over her face, feeling even more flustered. Meanwhile, Eris reported to His Highness about the hunters having wound up in a monster den, and the beast within contained a great deal of magic toxins. But he was able to uphold his duty without any casualties. With this, His Highness, Maxim du Liverstol Meerd Langdius, had nothing to fear. However, Maxim wanted Eris to refer to him as Brother Maxim, like he used to. Eris immediately refused. They may be brothers by blood, but 17 years ago, when Maxim was made the crown prince, Eris became his subject and was adopted by the Galbraiths. He explained that there had to be a clear line drawn between them. With that being said, Maxim asked Eris about the basket in his hand, but Eris threw it off, telling him to pay it no mind. Maxim then teased, knowing everything about his dear younger brother, including about a certain redhead. Eris would gasp in shock, giving his brother a chance to swipe a jerky from the basket. And after a bite, Maxim loved the taste and asked what kind of jerky it was. Eris told him it was scatspit jerky, leaving His Highness surprised that it was actually made from those tiny monsters. It tasted even better than 3-star beef. When Maxim asked if it was made by the voracious Villainess, Eris gave him her proper name. Maxim began teasing his brother, asking what he would do about this, since it wasn't often he hit it off with someone right from the start. However, Eris ignored him and left the tent. Still, he felt his brother might be right. It wasn't often he took to anyone upon meeting them, and he was still shocked that the lady with the flaming red hair was actually the voracious Villainess. Where was she hiding such a bold heart and a delicate frame? Not only was she unafraid of the monster, but Eris thought she looked beautiful, even with its blood on her. He was instantly captivated by her. Kaus then reported that they had brought the Backhorn's habitat under their control. He then teased the Duke, asking if Mel would be joining them at future banquets. Eris asked if he was the one who informed Maxim about their encounter, but Kaus played dumb. Alone in the woods, Eris figured Mel didn't believe when he said he'd bring her a gift, and knew she thought he was just being polite. Recalling the tears he saw in her eyes back then, he vowed to never make her make that face again. Over at Mel's home, she wondered if the Duke had really sent the letter in such a luxurious jeweled case. Her father told her a messenger had come 7 days ago on a blaze eagle bearing the Galbraith family crest. Hearing this, Mel was shocked and jealous, wishing she could have seen the creature herself. He then asked her what really happened at the banquet, and her answer remained the same. She was attacked by a magic beast, and the Duke saved her. The letter read that the Duke had a rewarding time with Mel at the banquet, and would like to request her hand in marriage. Wondering how serious the Duke was, Mel felt he might have an ulterior motive. They needed a good reason to turn down a formal proposal from the Duke. But for now, her father would send a response. Later, Mel thought her father was right, considering she and the Duke had never met before the banquet. They just got excited about enjoying monster meat. And that's when it hit her. The earnest Duke had no one to share his desire to try monster meat with. Until now, Mel understood how meaningless it felt with no one to talk to. Being a kindred spirit, she wanted the Duke to feel free to discuss his culinary curiosities with her. Suddenly, the letter glowed golden with magic, and Mel heard a personalized message from the Duke about how boring the banquet was for him after she left. He promised to visit her before the depths of winter, on the 18th day of the month of Sirius. And the 18th was tomorrow! Mel couldn't blame her father for being so flustered. She was too, with her heart pounding. After all, the Duke was coming the next day. She wondered if the Duke was really coming to propose to her. He didn't have to do all that just to try monster meat. Mel got into bed, holding a picture of her and her mother, and thinking about if the Duke would accept the viability of monster meat. Of all their work, her mother wanted to enrich the lives of people who lived in their cold and barren land. Mel inherited this research from her mother, and no matter how long it takes, she would force the world to recognize it. To that end, she had to make monster meat exceptionally delicious. The next morning, her stepmother, Countess Celia, entered her room, not happy to see that she wasn't ready. Mel was too scared to tell her she had only just woken up. Celia talked down on her for disgracing her noble status. Suddenly, the roar of a beast startled her. Mel ran to the window and saw a flock of glacial dragons, which Eris rode on. He came closer to the window, clarifying he was here for her hand, and naturally, he brought the gift he had promised. Mel would ask him to have the dragons land in the pasture to the north, while she finished her preparations. After closing the window, she buried her face in the curtain, completely flustered at how dashing Eris looked. The way he expertly rode the dragon was stunning. Moreover, it was a glacial dragon, which she'd never seen before. They were so different from the dragonlings around her family's territory. Celia interrupted her thoughts, telling Mel to inform her father that she wasn't feeling well. She was furious at Eris for showing up on a dragon, and now understood why people called him the Blood-Mad Duke. Mel then stopped her stepmother, letting her know that she did intend to accept the Duke's proposal with pleasure. When she met up with Eris, she explained she had only come back from the capital yesterday. She was still worried about her hair, but felt it would be worse to make the Duke and his men wait. Kaos would then apologize for the sudden visit, explaining that the Duke couldn't wait to see her again. Eris then asked where to deliver the gift. Seeing that there was actually a monster in the bag, she was so excited. She couldn't believe he actually brought one. Mel thanked him dearly and asked if she could take a peek. Getting closer to the bag, she noticed the monster wasn't moving and wondered if he had killed it. Eris took off the cover for her to see by herself. Looking at those horns and its golden fur, Mel had no doubts it was a royal moodle. Her eyes sparkled with joy. Moodles were white monsters with 2 spiral horns and 1 sharp pointed horn on their foreheads. Their beautiful pelts were highly prized, and royal moodles with golden fur were particularly valuable. However, their meat always got discarded, and Mel saw that as a waste. Seeing this specimen was quite rare, she asked Eris if he really wanted to give it to her. And of course he did. Grabbing her hand, he moved it close to the monster's heart, showing that it was still beating and alive. Mel realized he had put it to sleep with magic. She started fantasizing about the meat she would make, wondering if she should cut it thick, grill it, or stew it, or if she should roast it since it's marbled. She could use the different parts to enjoy a variety of dishes. Mel couldn't thank the Duke enough, feeling overjoyed at receiving such a wonderful gift. Soon after, Mel's father came to properly greet the Duke. She nearly forgot he had come here to ask for her hand in marriage. She would ask her father to allow the dragons hunt in the Bartos Mountains. He had no problems, but wondered if the moodle wasn't food for the dragons. To his surprise, it was for Mel. He was even more surprised the Duke already knew her taste. She also asked that they open the research facility, and Eris cut in, claiming he understood Mel to some degree, and despite the cruel rumors about her, his proposal still stood. However, Mel's father would be shocked to hear the moodle was still alive. The Duke wanted to see it being prepared, and his request was granted. Mel was then asked to show Eris to the research facility. Flying on the Duke's dragon, she was thrilled, and even found the dragon's cry cute. Seeing her mother's research facility again, she was a bit nervous, but thought her father would be relieved if the Duke accepted her. The first step was showing the Duke what she did in the research facility. She needed him to see everything, and it made her wonder if he would still be interested in her after seeing why she was so interested in eating monsters. At the research facility, Eris was shocked to see a magic circle written in ancient magic script. Mel's mother had created this, and Mel herself had improved on it. The inscription on it read, "I am the one who takes your life and sustains myself on your body." Seeing she used this to drain the magic from monsters, Eris asked if it wasn't difficult to do, using only the magic circle. Mel affirmed this, stating that draining magic from monsters required an additional tool. She would lead him to a warehouse where she brought out a cloudy quartz flask that she used for draining monsters' blood and magic. Eris was quite impressed. With its craftsmanship, the flask looked regular now, but her magic would change its color and luster. Then, Mel shyly asked the Duke for a favor. She'd like to see him behead a beast once again. Getting ready to prepare the royal moodle, Mel found it challenging to clean such a large beast by herself. So, she asked the Duke's men to assist her. On his signal, the men surrounded the beast, shearing its fur. In addition to slaying monsters, the Knights of Galbraith were also responsible for harvesting horns, claws, and pelts as resources. They were even skilled at shearing. When they were done, Mel played with the fluffy fur. She claimed the thread spun from this fur was premium enough to present to the royal family. but her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she was more interested in seeing what was inside the beast. She drooled, just thinking about how tasty a marbled royal moodle would be. However, Mel never wasted a life. She said a quick prayer, promising to treat the beast's precious life with care until the very end. She would then cast a spell, activating the magic circle, and gave Eris permission to proceed. In one swing, he cleaved the head of the monster. It was too fast for Mel's eyes to follow. No matter how many times she saw it, his swordsmanship was breathtaking. She was so impressed. Next, she proceeded to remove the monster's magic energy. As she chanted a spell, she began glowing brightly alongside the flask, and the monster's blood began flowing into it. Eris was stunned and speechless, but suddenly, the flask cracked. This had never happened before. One flask wouldn't be enough, but Mel couldn't let go now. Eris quickly came to help her. She explained the magic energy was too much and asked him to switch out the flask with a spare one. After he did so, she confirmed the spare flask would be enough, and soon she completed the spell. The Duke was surprised that the monster still looked plump. Mel told him she made sure not to let the meat dry out. Retaining moisture was the key to delicious meat. Eris was impressed and asked if she came up with the method, and she'd answer it was her mother. They've experienced terrible droughts and famines. 17 years ago, their people were starving. The Marshall Raid's lands were poor in resources, and the soil was barely fertile. So, Mel's mother began researching how to make use of their abundant monster population. If the process were made simple for anyone to use, it'd transform monsters from a nuisance to a tasty food source, and save the people. After her mother's death, Mel took over her research. Although lately, she seemed to be having a lot of fun sampling rare monsters. Eris then asked what she'd do with all the drained monster blood, to which she replied that she would use it to make fires. She wouldn't need fuel for cooking or lights in the research facility for 2 months. He then asked if that's all she'd use it for, and she wondered if there was another use for it. He couldn't help but laugh. He complimented that she was fine, just the way she was, and stated that her research was far more useful than what the court mages were doing. The magic energy in the flask could be used to create a weapon to destroy nations. Mel had no idea though, since she only ever handled monsters the size of jackals and tacos. Eris pointed out that rumors were just rumors, but when they were said with malice and took on a life of their own, they could cause unimaginable tragedy. No matter what people said, he promised he would show them no mercy if they tried to hurt her. However, he felt like the rumors of her drinking fresh blood were true. Mel denied it, but he teased that she looked like a vampire. Actually, he was bewitched by her beautiful, flaming red hair and green eyes that shone brighter than beryl. He genuinely felt he'd be willing to give his life for her. Mel was flustered and told him to stop teasing her. Still blushing hard, she complimented how his eyes looked beautiful when they glittered with magic energy, and that he looked marvelous with his coat fluttering behind him on his dragon. And so, the two were left flush. While feeding the dragons, Eris's hunt permit came in. Apparently, the royal moodle's organ meat wouldn't be enough for his dragons, given they were quite gluttonous. His stomach would then growl, leaving him embarrassed. She turned their attention to the tasty-looking moodle meat, which he was eager to try, and this was their only chance to have it fresh. Mel suggested slicing a bit from themselves and broiling it. They were more than enough for them to try the finer cuts. After they prepared the meat, Eris sprayed some spice onto Mel's hand. Upon tasting it, she lit up at its deliciousness. The aroma of the fresh herbs alone was enough to whet one's appetite, and the touch of salt was exquisite. Apparently, it was a ground blend of various spices, which Eris had swiped from the head chef. Mel made it clear they were only tasting this for poison. Of course they weren't sneaking a bite, but to be safe, she said they'd have to cook the first ones thoroughly. Eris saw this as unbearable torture, but it had to be done to ensure the best experience. Staring at the tasty meat, they were already drooling, but they still needed to turn them over and cook them again. Kaus would approach them, causing them to panic. The Duke handed him the permit, asking him to go feed the dragons, but Kaus asked him to go tag along. Eris replied he was busy with Mel. Then Kaus began teasing him for leaving his hungry crew to sneak a bite, so Eris would have no choice but to offer him a skewer. However, they still had the rest of the knights to feed. Kaus explained to Mel that the knights had only been eating dreadful monster meat, and he pleaded that she give them the honor of sampling the meat for poison. Afterwards, Kaus tried to taste the one Eris was holding, but the Duke refused. He then teased Eris for holding onto it because it was the first one Mel had cooked for him. Eris became flustered, and they started arguing. Mel then gave Kaus a skewer to taste, and as he took a bite, she was freaking out on the inside, curious to know how it tasted. Kaus then told her it wasn't gamey at all. Also, it melted and filled the mouth. It could practically be called a beverage. Eris could barely endure the torture any longer. Although it didn't upset Kaus' stomach, he mentioned that it takes time for magic to cause a stomachache. So, the Duke was left devastated. Mel had never gotten an upset stomach from magic toxins, and wasn't able to speak on the matter. But according to those who have, symptoms could appear immediately or as late as overnight. Hearing this, Eris knew he couldn't wait. He needed to have some now. His knights also agreed with him. Mel, as well, couldn't hold back anymore. She felt they all needed to have some before it got cold, and even if they got sick, they'd prepare medicine right away. So, she shared skewers with everyone, and they all took a bite. Immediately, they were mesmerized by how delicious it was. Even when slightly cooled, the fat hadn't solidified, and the meat was still juicy. Since the moodle was a herbivore, it had the rich, palate-bathing essence of fruit. Eris praised Mel for being a genius, but she gave all the honor to her mother's research. The Duke never thought monster meat could be this delicious. He only had terrible experiences since he never prepared them properly. And he didn't want to think of all the monster meat he had to discard up until now. When he tried sneaking another bite, Mel approached him. He'd panic, but she mentioned that she was thinking about heading into the lab. Upon entering the lab, Eris was amazed by how incredible it looked. He could tell it was an archetypal research lab. He then took a look at the scat-spit spike Mel used in traps for capturing monsters. The Duke asked if the knights helped her in hunting monsters, and she replied that they did sometimes. Other times, she enlisted hunters from a nearby village. However, she often hunted alone. This made him question if the Count and the people took issue with her research. And Mel knew she couldn't stand in the way of their beliefs. She knew very well that everyone had complicated feelings about her and her mother's research. Even the people her mother saved from starvation hid the fact that they survived by eating monster meat. Eris referred to this as animism, or the belief that all objects, natural phenomena, and the universe itself possesses a soul or monster. In Mel's family's territory, there were many who believed in animism, which prohibited the consumption of monsters. Still, she couldn't live without her mother's research. Eris asked why she hadn't given up, seeing that the people didn't believe in her work. Mel then asked if he recalled what happened 17 years ago. He did, because it was the reason he was adopted out as a ward. He took her by the hand over to the couch and asked her to sit beside him. Then, he asked her how she became the voracious Villainess. To this, Mel would refer to him as Your Grace, but he'd prefer she call him by his name. He reminded her that he was here for her hand in marriage. Plus, he had done some research on her family. Mel saw herself as a girl with a questionable past, who was shunned by high society. She believed she'd be a burden if he married her. But Eris didn't want Mel to give up on her research, and stated with the Galbraith family, she could research to her heart's content. He wanted to know more about her. He wanted to know how she felt about him. Being the blood-mad Duke, he wondered if she feared him. He slaughtered monsters, lived soaked in their blood, and was Duke only in name. Mel was now speechless, realizing what he actually meant. Alright, we're progressing here. They definitely make fictional monster meat look tasty. Subscribe to keep up with next week's part, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.